The truth doesn't whisper. It waits. It stalks. And when it finally returns, it explodes like a bomb, shattering everything in its path. That's what happened the day Prince William opened the envelope. A thin, fragile envelope that looked harmless, insignificant, almost too ordinary to matter. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. But inside it, a truth his mother died trying to protect. Let me ask you something. What would you do if you discovered that your entire childhood, your entire identity, your entire understanding of why your mother lived and why she died was built on a lie? Would you break down? Would you run? Would you confront the person responsible, even if that person sat on the throne? Because that's the choice William faced. And it all began with a DNA test no one was ever supposed to see. A test Princess Diana ordered during the final, turbulent months of her life. A test she hid from everyone, including the man she feared most. A test that reveals not who someone is, but who someone isn't. And now that test has resurfaced, decades after her death. The timing? Suspicious. The chain of custody? Even more disturbing. But the emotional devastation it unleashed inside Prince William? Unmistakable. People close to him said they'd never seen him like this. The future king, composed, articulate, dignified. Reduced to silence, tears sliding down his face, fingers trembling as he held the report that confirmed his mother's final secret. Not a rumor, not speculation, not one of those outrageous conspiracy theories that newspapers print for attention. A secret Diana herself documented, verified, protected, and feared. Why? Because, according to multiple insiders, the truth she uncovered put her life in danger. And she knew it. She wrote about it in letters. She hinted at it in interviews. She told close friends, "They're planning something. They want to silence me." Those weren't metaphors. Those weren't exaggerations. Those were warnings. But here's the part that makes your stomach drop. The person she feared wasn't a stalker, not a journalist, not a random enemy. It was someone inside her own home, someone inside the monarchy, someone who knew that Diana was about to expose something that could destroy everything. And that someone was King Charles. At least, that's what Diana believed. She told confidants that Charles wanted her gone. She wrote that if anything happened to her, people should investigate him. She even predicted the exact way she would die. A brake failure, a staged accident, a coordinated attempt to make it look like a tragic mistake. How do you predict the method of your own death months before it happens, unless you already know too much? And here's the most unsettling part. That DNA test. That simple test that Diana took in secret, it was the final trigger, the final straw, the final piece of evidence that allegedly pushed Charles to the point of desperation. Now, I know what you're thinking. A DNA test? What could possibly be so explosive, so dangerous, so world-altering that it would put Diana in the crosshairs of the most powerful institution in the United Kingdom? What truth was she trying to protect? Whose identity was she trying to reveal? And why did William break down the moment he saw the results? That's what we're uncovering today. But before we dive into the sealed package, the missing doctor, the intercepted phone calls, and the explosive revelation at the heart of this story, you need to understand the world Diana was living in. A world where every move was monitored. Every conversation was overheard. Every secret had a price. A world where one wrong truth could cost you everything. And Diana knew she had crossed a line. She knew she was being watched. She knew she was in danger. Yet she still went through with the test. Why? Because she wanted to protect someone. Someone she loved. Someone the monarchy needed to control. And that someone was her son. But the full weight of that truth wouldn't hit William until decades later. When the envelope finally reached him. When the seal finally broke. When the results finally surfaced. Results that didn't just shake him, they shattered him. And what came next would change everything. Because the truth inside that envelope didn't just expose a secret. It exposed a motive. A motive for betrayal. A motive for fear. A motive for murder. But before we get to the revelation that made Prince William break down in tears, we need to go back. Back to the moment Diana realized something was terribly wrong. Back to the warning she tried to give her sons. Back to the night she said the words that still haunt people today. They're planning something. And as it turns out, she was right. Diana asked herself that question every single day during her final years. And the truth is, she already knew the answer. She couldn't trust the palace. She couldn't trust the staff who reported back to Charles. She couldn't trust the friends who spent afternoons sipping tea with her and nights whispering her fears into the ears of her worst enemies. The monarchy wasn't a family to her. It was a system, a machine. And she was the variable the machine could never control. You ever felt like you were standing alone in a room full of people who smiled but secretly wanted you gone? That was Diana's daily reality. And it got worse. Because the moment she asked for the DNA test, they knew. Not because she told anyone. Not because she left a paper trail. Not because she made a careless mistake. They knew because they were always watching. Every appointment she made. Every car ride. Every phone call. Every whisper behind closed doors. You're going to hear things in this story that sound absolutely unbelievable. Until you remember who Diana was and who she was up against. She wasn't going up against one person. She was going up against an institution, centuries old, with a singular mission. Protect the crown at all costs. And Diana? She had become the biggest threat the crown had ever seen. Why? Because she knew something. Not a rumor. Not gossip. Not a scandal the tabloids invented. Something real. Something scientific. Something provable. A truth rooted in DNA, ancestry, bloodlines, and succession. A truth that could shake the very foundation of the monarchy. She discovered something that made her fear for her son's safety and for her own life. And that's why she acted fast. You're about to see how calculated, how intentional, and how brave Diana was during those final months. This wasn't a woman spiraling out of control. This wasn't a princess losing her grip. This was a mother fighting a war with no weapons except the truth. And she knew her time was running out. That's why she started writing everything down. Letters, notes, little messages folded into diaries, placed between pages, slipped into envelopes marked W. Not H. Not anyone else. W. Because whatever this secret was, it was connected to William. Now, ask yourself, what kind of secret could Diana uncover that would threaten the monarchy so deeply that she believed her life was at risk? Think about it. Infidelity? Too common. Personal scandals? They happen every generation. Embarrassing admissions? Hardly enough to justify the fear Diana lived with. No, this secret had to be bigger, heavier, more catastrophic. Something that could disrupt the entire line of succession. Something that could turn public sentiment against the monarchy instantly. Something that could prove someone inside the palace had lied for decades. And Diana had the evidence. The DNA test wasn't an emotional reaction. It wasn't a moment of panic. It wasn't a dramatic gesture. It was her insurance policy, her shield, her message to the world that if anything happened to her, the truth would outlive her. But there was one problem she didn't foresee. The test results didn't reach William. Not then. Not for years. Not until someone, a person whose identity we'll uncover later, finally decided to reveal what Diana died trying to tell him. Imagine living your whole life believing one version of history. Then, suddenly, out of nowhere, being handed proof that everything you thought you knew was wrong. Imagine being William, raised to carry the crown, raised to survive the media, raised to endure the loss of the mother he adored, only to learn that her death wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't fate. It was connected to a secret she uncovered, a secret someone desperately wanted destroyed, a secret proven by science. And this is where the timing becomes haunting, because the envelope didn't reach William during his teens, or his early 20s, or even when he married Kate. It reached him many years later, at a moment when royal tensions were already at their peak, when the rivalry between the brothers was growing, when the public was questioning the monarchy more fiercely than ever, when hidden files were being leaked, exposed, discussed in whispers among journalists and royal insiders. Whoever released that envelope understood one thing. The truth would hit harder now than it ever could before. And it did. The shock, the disbelief, the emotional collapse. William didn't read the results in public. He didn't read them with advisors. He didn't read them with Kate. He read them alone. A quiet room, a desk, a sealed envelope, a single sheet of paper, a truth that waited over 20 years to reach him. People who saw him afterward described him as devastated, broken, and visibly shaken. Because the DNA test didn't just reveal a scientific fact. It revealed a betrayal that involved his parents, a betrayal that involved palace officials, a betrayal that involved someone with the power to rewrite history. But let's pause for a moment here. Before we move forward, you need to understand that everything Diana did, from the clinic visit to the hidden envelope, was part of a timeline, a countdown. In the weeks before her trip to Paris, Diana became someone new. Not weaker, not erratic, not emotional, as some newspapers claimed. She became determined, focused, urgent. She spoke in code. She met people in secret. She made calls from payphones, something she hadn't done since the early years of her marriage. Why? Because she believed her home was bugged. She believed her phone was monitored. Her car followed. Her actions reported. Not paranoia. Experience. Because every time she tried to reveal something, someone intervened. Plans fell apart. Meetings were canceled. Journalists backed out. Documents vanished. Someone was watching. Someone was intercepting. Someone was preventing Diana from exposing the secret she had uncovered. And the more she tried to push forward, the more aggressive the resistance became. She even confided to a friend. They're getting desperate. Not worried. Not annoyed. Desperate. That's a dangerous word when you're talking about people with power. Because desperation makes people reckless. And Diana sensed it. That leads us to the night that changed everything. The night she tried to warn William. The night she held him close and whispered words he didn't understand at the time. Always look deeper. Not everything is what it seems. A mother's warning. A coded message. A clue. A truth William would only understand decades later, when he finally opened the envelope she left behind. And inside, step by step, piece by piece, was the beginning of the secret she died to protect. But what exactly did that test reveal? What truth was so dangerous that it shook the palace to its core? What connection did it expose? What relationship did it confirm or deny? Why did Diana believe this information put her in danger? And most importantly, why did Charles allegedly want that truth buried? We're about to answer all of that. Because the Real story begins with the moment Diana realized something was terribly, tragically wrong. And once she discovered the truth, there was no turning back. The walls began closing in. The monitoring intensified. The threats became clearer. And her fear, once subtle, became overwhelming. But she didn't stop. She pressed forward. Because she knew what she uncovered wasn't just a scandal. It was a motive powerful enough to make someone take the unthinkable step of removing her from the picture entirely. And that brings us directly to the first major turning point in this investigation. The moment Diana wrote the letter predicting her own death. The moment she confessed the monarchy was planning something. The moment her fate became sealed. Diana didn't write that letter on a whim. She didn't write it to be dramatic. She didn't write it because she feared the press, or a stalker, or the chaos outside her front door. She wrote it because she had identified the threat inside her world. The threat wasn't nameless. It wasn't faceless. It wasn't imagined. It was someone she believed had both the motive and the ability to silence her permanently. And that's why she told friends to hold on to her notes. Why she left breadcrumbs behind. Why she insisted her words be preserved, not destroyed. Deep down, she knew the truth. One day, someone would need them. Someone like William. Someone who would be strong enough to uncover what she couldn't finish. Someone who would have the authority to hold people accountable. Someone who would eventually inherit the power that her enemies feared, but she trusted. Diana didn't think she would live long enough to tell her sons the full story. But she believed that one day, when the timing was right, William would piece everything together. Her letters, her warnings, her fears, her recorded statements, her clinic visit, her DNA test, each one part of a puzzle she never got the chance to finish. And now, decades later, William finally holds the completed picture in his hands. Imagine being him. You open a sealed envelope addressed to you by the mother you lost at 15. You unfold a document she meant for you to read as an adult. You see test results that contradict everything the world believed. Everything the monarchy insisted was true. Everything your father assured the public. You see proof. Scientific. Undeniable. Irreversible. And suddenly, all the old questions come flooding back. Why was she so afraid? Why did she speak so carefully in public? Why did she constantly look over her shoulder? Why did she hint, over and over again, that someone was trying to stop her? Why did she warn her friends that something was coming? And why did she predict her own death with chilling accuracy? For William, the answer was finally right in front of him. A truth so devastating he broke down in tears. A truth so explosive it could shake the monarchy to its core. A truth Diana uncovered, and someone desperately wanted silenced. And now, for the first time, we trace the secret back to its beginning. Back to the moment Diana realized the monarchy had turned against her. Back to the moment she wrote the one line that still sends chills down the spine of anyone who reads it. They are planning something, and it will be done when I least expect it. This is where the story truly begins. Because what Diana wrote next, the deeper warning hidden between her lines, leads directly into her most haunting revelation. And it all starts with a letter she left behind, one that spelled out exactly who she believed wanted her gone, and why. The letter was never meant to be found this soon. Tucked away inside a worn, leather-bound notebook, folded twice, creased along the edges, preserved by someone who understood the danger it represented, it sat quietly for years, waiting for the moment its truth would finally explode into daylight. And when investigators later traced the timeline, one chilling truth became unavoidable. Princess Diana didn't just predict her death. She documented the reason behind it. Let me ask you something. If you knew someone powerful was plotting against you, how would you warn the world without putting the people you love in even more danger? Would you write it down? Would you whisper it to the few people you trusted? Or would you hide the truth in places only your children would one day find? Diana did all three, because she knew something was coming. The night she wrote the letter, she sat alone in Kensington Palace, rain tapping the window, her lamp casting a soft glow across her desk. Outside her door, two guards paced the hallway, unaware of what she was doing. Inside the palace walls, whispers were circulating about her emotional state, her popularity, her independence, her refusal to play by the rules. But none of that compared to the secret Diana now carried. A secret that kept her awake at night. A secret she believed threatened her life. A secret rooted in betrayal, identity, and a truth so explosive it could shake the monarchy's foundation. She dipped her pen in ink, paused, and wrote the words that would haunt the world after her death. They're planning something. Not someone. Not he. Not she. They. Plural. Coordinated. Organized. People with power. People inside the system. People who had the means to silence her and make it look accidental. She didn't name them openly. She didn't have to. Those close to her knew exactly who she meant. And the palace staff? They felt it too. The tension tightening like a rope around her life. Diana believed she was being watched, listened to, followed, not by paparazzi, not by fans, but by people who wanted to know every move she made. She had noticed it gradually at first, the unfamiliar faces lurking in hallways, the new staff who came and went without explanation, the subtle shift in how certain advisors spoke to her. Then it grew more obvious. Her phone line crackled. Her conversations echoed. Her messages disappeared. Her private notes were found unfolded, then clumsily refolded, as if someone had taken a peek. And when she confronted a senior staff member about why her schedule was leaked to a journalist, he simply went pale and said, "You're imagining things." You know that tone. It's the one people use when they want you to doubt yourself. But Diana wasn't imagining it. She kept a diary, one that hasn't fully been released to the public, and in it, she wrote line after line about her growing fear. I feel surrounded. They know everything. I need to protect myself. They want to control the narrative. I must tell the boys before it's too late. These weren't ramblings of a paranoid woman. These were the words of someone who finally understood the scale of the machine she was fighting. And the DNA test? That was her nuclear trigger. The thing that pushed her from worried to terrified. But you'll see how all of that ties together later. For now, let's look at the night she wrote the letter that would one day shake Prince William to his core. It was late, past midnight. The palace was quiet. Even the guards were quiet. Unusually so, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Diana sat with her back to the door, knowing full well that if anyone walked in, she could be reported. She held the pen, paused, and wrote, I am sitting here at my desk today in October, longing for someone to listen and believe me. There have been plans made for me that I cannot stop. Read that again. There have been plans made for me that I cannot stop. She didn't say rumors. She didn't say concerns. She didn't say possibilities. She said plans. And she didn't say she feared she would die. She described the method. If I die, it will be through break failure or some kind of staged accident. How does a person describe their own death with such eerie precision? Unless they already knew too much. Unless someone had already warned her. Unless she'd overheard something. Unless she'd seen something. Unless she had evidence. Diana wasn't foolish. She wasn't reckless. She was, in many ways, the most informed person in the monarchy. She knew the system. She knew its secrets. She knew its players. And she knew what happened to those who disobeyed. You think the palace liked that she was adored worldwide? That she outshined the future king? That she challenged tradition? Of course not. They needed her quiet, obedient, predictable. But Diana didn't play that role anymore. She was meeting with international leaders, charity figures, human rights activists, people the monarchy couldn't control. And, most importantly, she was speaking openly about things the palace wanted buried forever. Her marriage, her isolation, her treatment by Charles, her suspicions about the institution. But there was one topic she didn't dare mention publicly. The one tied directly to the DNA test. The one she believed would make her a target. The one she hinted about in that letter. She wrote, "It is all so complicated, but the truth will come out one day." She didn't say she hoped. She didn't say she believed. She said will. And she left behind breadcrumbs, notes, letters, contacts, documents. Because she knew the truth couldn't die with her. But here's the part that still makes historians uneasy. The letter disappeared. No one saw it for years. Not the public. Not the boys. Not investigators. It resurfaced much later, during a moment of extreme tension inside the royal family. And that resurfacing wasn't an accident. It was deliberate. Someone was waiting. Someone was watching. Someone knew when the perfect moment would come. But before we get to who that person was, and why they revealed the letter only after decades, we need to go back even further. Because Diana didn't start writing warnings out of nowhere. There was a trigger, a moment, an event, a realization so disturbing that it changed her forever. It happened weeks before the letter, at a place she once considered safe, on a night she would later describe in her diary as the moment everything shifted. She had confronted someone powerful, someone who reacted with rage, fear, and something darker, someone who told her, "You have no idea what you were playing with." What does that mean? What was she playing with? Information, evidence, truth. The kind of truth powerful people cannot afford to let exist. After that confrontation, Diana stopped trusting the palace entirely. She switched phones. She switched cars. She switched staff. She changed her routes. She even changed the way she spoke to her own children. She once told a friend, "I can't tell William everything. Not yet. Not until I know how deep this goes." She wasn't trying to shield herself. She was trying to shield her sons. But eventually, she realized she had no choice. She had to document everything she knew. Because if the worst happened, she needed William, and eventually Harry, to know exactly where to start looking. And that's why she left the warnings behind. Not because she was afraid. Because she knew she wouldn't survive long enough to tell the story herself. Let that sink in. Diana knew she was running out of time. And yet, through all the fear, all the pressure, all the surveillance, she remained calm enough, focused enough, strategic enough, to take one last step. She began preparing the evidence. Notes, letters, names, dates, appointments, medical records, phone logs, clinic details, and the DNA test. That was the crown jewel. The one piece of evidence that connected every fear, every warning, every whisper, every suspicion she carried. And she believed that once William saw it, once he understood what she had discovered, he would finally see why she felt she was being targeted. But before we reach that explosive reveal, before we talk about what was inside that test, before we unveil why it shook William to tears, we need to examine the first person Diana told about her fear. Because the night she wrote the letter, she didn't write it only for herself. She made a phone call, a quiet one, a short one, a call she never told anyone else about, a call investigators later traced, not to a journalist, not to a friend, not to a staff member, but to someone inside the palace, someone she trusted, someone she believed could help her, someone she believed still had a conscience. And that person told her something that made her physically freeze, something that validated her fear, something that confirmed her suspicions, something that made her write the words. They're planning something. But what exactly did they tell her? And how did that conversation lead to the secret DNA test she rushed to take only days later? You're about to find out. Because that call, the one nobody knew about, is where everything begins. The memory didn't make sense to William at first. He was 12 years old. Too young to understand. Too innocent to see the dangers surrounding his mother. Too protected to recognize the fear behind her smile. But decades later, when he opened the envelope, when he read the DNA report Diana left behind, when he pieced together her letters, her visits, her warnings, that childhood memory slammed into him like a tidal wave. A moment he had forgotten. A moment that suddenly meant everything. The night his mother tried to tell him the truth. Before we go into that moment, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked back at a memory, one you didn't fully understand at the time, and suddenly realized it was a warning? Something someone was trying to tell you, but couldn't say out loud? That's exactly what happened to William. And now, finally, we're going to revisit the night Diana attempted to protect her son in the only way she knew how. Through hints, coded words, and the kind of emotional urgency that only makes sense when you understand the danger behind it. It happened in early autumn. William remembered the soft rustle of leaves outside his bedroom window, the faint hum of palace staff cleaning up after dinner, the distant echo of laughter from Harry's room as a nanny tried to get him into bed. William was already tucked in. The lamp beside him cast a warm glow over the room. His books were stacked neatly on his nightstand. His school uniform hung pressed and ready for the next morning. Everything looked normal, ordinary, safe. But Diana entered with an expression William had never seen before. Not sadness, not stress, not frustration. Urgency. A quiet, trembling urgency. She closed the door softly behind her, too softly. Not the usual gentle mother's gesture, but a deliberate one. A cautious one. She sat on the edge of his bed, brushing a hand through his hair. He smiled. She didn't. That alone should have told him something was wrong. She looked over her shoulder, twice. Once at the door, once at the window. You don't check windows in Kensington Palace. But she did. Her voice was soft, almost whisper-like when she spoke. I need you to listen very carefully, darling. Not sweetheart. Not William. Not my love. Darling. In a way that felt rehearsed. Almost like she was afraid to say too much. 12-year-old William didn't understand. He nodded anyway. Diana swallowed. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with fear. Real fear. The kind that unsettles you even when you don't understand the danger. What did she say next? William didn't remember all the words. How could he? But he remembered the tone. The pauses. The way her voice caught in her throat, like she was trying to push the truth out, but couldn't. She said things like, there are people who don't want me here. There are things you need to remember. One day you'll understand, but not now. Imagine being 12 and hearing that. Imagine your mother, your everything, telling you that she was in danger, but without telling you why. At the time, William interpreted it the way any child would. As confusion, as emotional exhaustion, as something adults said when they were going through a difficult time. He asked, are you leaving? She shook her head. No smile. No reassurance. Instead, she cupped his face with both hands. Her fingers trembled. That detail stuck with him. Her hands were shaking. My job, she whispered, is to protect you and Harry. But there are things happening that I can't explain right now. He tried to ask more. She pressed a finger to her lips. Just remember this, she said. Always look deeper. Not everything is what it seems. Those words would mean nothing to a child, but they would mean everything to a grown man holding a DNA report decades later. And then, this is the detail William never forgot. She glanced at the door again. Her voice dropped even lower. If anything ever happens to me, it won't be an accident. Think about that for a moment. Your mother, your hero, your source of comfort and love, sitting at the foot of your bed, shaking, checking the door, checking the window, and telling you she might die. Not from illness, not from tragedy, from something planned. William didn't understand that night. His child's mind couldn't process the magnitude of what she was saying. But he remembered her eyes, the intensity, the fear, the way she looked as though time was chasing her. He remembered how tightly she hugged him, not the soft motherly squeeze she gave every night, but a long, fierce embrace. Almost desperate, as if she were afraid she might not get another chance. And when she finally pulled away, she whispered words he didn't remember until years later. Remember what I've told you today? You'll need it when you're older. Then she kissed his forehead, turned off the light, closed the door, and paused. She stood there, on the other side of the doorframe, for just a moment. Long enough that William could see her silhouette in the hallway light. Long enough for him to feel that something was terribly wrong. But then she walked away. And that was the last time she tried to warn him directly. Now here's where things get truly chilling. That night wasn't random. It wasn't emotional overflow. It wasn't a breakdown. It wasn't an unstable moment. It happened after something specific. Something that triggered her fear. Something that shook her to the core. This is where the timeline becomes everything. Because Diana wrote her warning letter only days later. Then she visited the doctor. Then she made the confidential phone call. Then she scheduled her secret appointment at the private clinic. The warning she gave William was the first domino. She knew she had no more time. The walls were closing in. And then, years later, when William opened the envelope and saw the DNA results she had fought to protect, the memory of that night came back with brutal clarity. Suddenly, everything she said made sense. The urgency, the fear, the warning about accidents, the coded message, the trembling hands, the refusing to explain fully, the insistence he remember her words when he was older. Because the truth Diana uncovered, the truth in the DNA test, was directly connected to the danger she sensed. She couldn't explain it to a 12-year-old child, so she tried to give him a map, a path, a clue, a whispered message meant to unlock itself years later, when he had the maturity and the evidence to understand it. But here's the twist. William wasn't the only person she tried to warn that night. That same evening, after leaving William's room, she went somewhere else. Somewhere unexpected. Somewhere off limits for what she was about to say. She spoke to someone. Someone she trusted. Or thought she could trust. Someone inside the palace. And whatever she said to that person, whatever fear she expressed, whatever truth she hinted at, that person reacted in a way that would haunt her. A reaction that confirmed her worst suspicions. A reaction that made her realize she was being monitored. Because she didn't leave that conversation feeling safer. She left feeling exposed, vulnerable, threatened. And later that same night, she wrote the first draft of the letter predicting her death. This is the moment everything shifted. But the part even Diana didn't fully understand was this. Someone overheard her conversation with William. Not a servant, not a nanny, not a passerby. Someone whose job was to report anything unusual. Someone loyal to the palace. Someone with access to Charles. And when they heard what Diana told her son, when they heard her admitting she was afraid, her warning him about danger, her hinting that the monarchy was closing in, they didn't stay silent. They told someone. And the moment that message changed hands, Diana's fate was sealed. But who overheard it? Who reported it? And what exactly did they say? The answer to that question begins the next explosive chapter in Diana's story. Because when Diana confronted Charles about what she feared, about the monitoring, about the strange behavior inside the palace, about the growing pressure around her, his reaction told her everything she needed to know. There are moments in history that never appear in documentaries, never surface in interviews, never get written down in royal biographies. Moments too volatile, too revealing, too dangerous for public consumption. This is one of them. A confrontation so explosive that it shook the walls of Kensington Palace. A confrontation that changed Diana's behavior overnight. A confrontation that confirmed her worst fears and revealed Charles's darkest anger. But before we go into that night, let me start with a question. Have you ever seen someone lose control, not gently, not subtly, but in a way that exposes who they truly are behind closed doors? That's what Diana witnessed, and it terrified her. This wasn't the controlled, polished Charles the world knew. This wasn't the father who appeared in photographs with a half smile. This wasn't the poised future king waving from palace balconies. This was a man cornered, threatened, rattled, and furious. Why? Because Diana had begun pushing too close to a truth he wanted buried. Let's rewind. Only hours after the night Diana warned William, someone reported her words. Someone inside the palace. Someone loyal to Charles. The message was delivered quickly, quietly, discreetly. Diana is talking about danger again. She thinks something is being planned. She's saying it in front of the boys. Those details mattered. Talking to friends was one thing. Talking to journalists was dangerous. But talking to William? That was unacceptable. Because if William believed her, if William started asking questions, if William began watching the palace the way Diana did, the entire system could implode. Charles couldn't allow that. That's why he stormed into the room. It was late evening, close to midnight. Diana was still awake, pacing near her window, replaying the memory of the conversation she'd had with her son. She was shaken, but determined. Then she heard the footsteps. Fast, heavy, purposeful. Not the gentle steps of a guard. Not the soft walk of a maid. Not the cautious taps of someone approaching politely. A march. She barely had time to turn before the door flew open. Charles entered with an expression she had rarely seen. Rage mixed with something colder, sharper, more dangerous. What did you tell William? No greeting. No subtlety. No small talk. Just an accusation thrown into the air like a dagger. Diana straightened her shoulders. I told him the truth, she replied. Those 5 words ignited him. The truth. Charles snapped. His voice shook with anger. You don't know the meaning of the word. Oh, the irony. Diana stepped back, but her voice didn't waver. I'm protecting my sons. Charles's eyes narrowed. From what? That was the question she feared. Not because she didn't know the answer, but because she knew saying it out loud was the one thing Charles couldn't tolerate. She hesitated, and Charles saw the hesitation. He stepped closer. Too close. Close enough that she could see the strain in his jaw. You need to stop this nonsense, he hissed. You're going to destroy this family. Diana's response was quiet, but relentless. This family destroyed itself. For a moment, Charles froze. Not because of the insult, but because he realized she wasn't afraid of him anymore. And nothing threatens a controlling man more than a woman who stops being frightened. Charles leaned in even closer, voice low. You have no idea what you were playing with. Diana matched his gaze. I know exactly what I'm playing with. And that was the moment Charles snapped. His composure cracked. His face flushed. His voice rose. You think you can undermine me? You think you can turn the boys against me? You think you can expose things you don't understand? His anger wasn't about his marriage. It wasn't about heartbreak. It wasn't even about embarrassment. It was about power, control, legacy. But what Diana said next stopped him cold. I know about the test. Silence. A silence so deep, so sharp, so electrifying that it made the air itself feel dangerous. Charles blinked. Once. Twice. What test? He asked. Diana watched him carefully. You know exactly which one. Charles's jaw tightened, tension rippling through him. For the first time in their marriage, he didn't know what she knew. He didn't know how much information she had. He didn't know how far she had gone. And it terrified him. Because secrets can be controlled. As long as the people holding them can be controlled. But Diana was no longer controllable. He stepped back, trying to regain composure, trying to recenter himself in the dynamic. You're being irrational. No, Diana said. I'm being honest. That word again. Honest. A word Charles hated when it came from her. Because honesty meant exposure. And exposure meant danger. Charles pointed a finger at her. You will stop this. Now. You will not involve the boys. You will not spread rumors. You will not go looking for trouble. Diana laughed. Not a joyful laugh. A broken one. A laugh of disbelief. Trouble, she repeated. Charles, I'm not looking for trouble. Trouble is looking for me. Charles stiffened. She stepped closer. And you know exactly why. Charles didn't respond. He couldn't. Because she was right. He turned to leave, but before he reached the door, Diana said the sentence that would echo in his mind for days. The truth always comes out, Charles. You can delay it, you can bury it, you can silence the people who carry it, but it always finds a way. He froze at the doorway. Slowly, he looked over his shoulder. A dangerous glare. A glare William would later remember as the look my father gave when he felt exposed. And Charles said, not if you don't live long enough to tell it. Diana stopped breathing. He didn't shout it. He didn't threaten explicitly. He didn't say, I will. He didn't say someone will. He let the implication do the work. A cold, calculated implication. Then he walked out, closed the door, and left Diana alone, trembling, not because of the words themselves, but because of the tone. Calm. Confident. Certain. He didn't sound like a man losing control. He sounded like a man who already had a plan. Now here's the chilling part. After that confrontation, Diana told her closest friend, something bad is coming. I can feel it. She didn't sleep that night. She sat in the dark, replaying Charles's words, his expression, his warning. And that was the night she decided she couldn't wait any longer. She needed proof, documentation, evidence. Science. Something undeniable. Something that even the monarchy couldn't twist or hide. And that's when she made the decision that changed everything. She scheduled the appointment. The private clinic. The hidden tests. The secret hair sample. The doctor who would later flee the country. It all started because of that confrontation. But here's the part almost no one knows. Someone else overheard the argument. Someone standing outside the door. Someone who reported directly to Charles. Someone who became the missing puzzle piece in the chain of lies that followed. This individual didn't intervene. They didn't comfort Diana. They didn't warn her. They walked away, went straight to a private line, and made a phone call. A call that would set events in motion that Diana had feared for years. But who was this person? And why were they so invested in keeping Diana quiet? The answer leads us directly into her next desperate move. Because the morning after Charles's explosion, Diana left the palace in secret. No security detail, no announcement, no record in the royal schedule. Just a single woman, alone, driving toward a clinic with evidence that could dismantle the monarchy. And what happened inside that clinic would become one of the most heavily guarded secrets of the royal family's modern history. She didn't tell anyone she was leaving. Not her staff, not her security detail, not her friends, not even the boy's nanny, who was usually informed of Diana's every move. This time, Diana slipped out alone. And that, by itself, was unusual enough to raise alarms. Because in the royal family, nothing is spontaneous. Nothing is unplanned. Nothing is private. Every drive, every walk, every charity visit, every lunch meeting, scheduled, recorded, reported. Even Diana's most intimate moments were logged by someone. But not today. Today, she broke the rules. Let me ask you something. Have you ever reached a point where fear becomes so overwhelming, so all-consuming, that you stop caring about protocol? That's where Diana was. She could not risk bringing anyone with her. Not her usual driver. Not her bodyguards. Not even the guards assigned by the palace. Because she suspected the truth. The danger wasn't outside. It was inside. Inside the palace walls. Inside her circle. Inside the system meant to protect her. So she grabbed her coat, threw a scarf around her neck, tucked her hair behind her ears, and stepped into a small black car that no one expected her to use. Not the large official one. Not the car with flags. Not the one tracked by security. An older model. Unremarkable. Forgettable. The kind of car no one would associate with a princess. She started the engine. Her hands shook. She breathed deeply, glancing at the rearview mirror. Not once, not twice, but 6 times before she even pulled away. She wasn't looking for paparazzi. She was looking for someone else. Someone she feared far more. When the coast seemed clear, she drove out of the palace gates at a quiet hour. So quiet that even the main guards didn't realize who was behind the wheel. She didn't speed. She didn't draw attention. She didn't take the main roads she normally used. Instead, she took the winding side routes. Back streets. Hidden turns. Paths she had studied weeks earlier. Just in case she ever needed to disappear unnoticed. Every minute of that drive, she felt eyes watching her. Every stoplight felt too long. Every lane change felt risky. Every car behind her felt suspicious. But she kept going. Because she had one mission. Find answers before someone stopped her. Find proof before someone took it away. Find the truth before the truth killed her. She arrived at the clinic 30 minutes before her scheduled secret appointment. Except, there was no appointment on the books. She had arranged it through whispered conversations, coded instructions, and a middleman who didn't even know her real name. A private clinic. Not on royal documents. Not used by palace physicians. Not tied to royal insurance. Diana chose this place for a reason. It specialized in genetic testing. And she came prepared. She walked through the back entrance. Hood up, scarf wrapped, sunglasses on even though it was cloudy. Inside, a single doctor stood waiting. A tall man with thinning hair, wire-rimmed glasses, and a nervous smile that twitched whenever he looked at her. His hands trembled slightly, not because she was Diana, but because he understood the danger of what he was about to do. He closed the blinds, locked the door, turned off the hallway light. Only then did he say, "You came alone?" Diana nodded. He hesitated. "Is anyone following you?" Diana took a moment before answering. "I hope not." That wasn't a joke. It was a confession. She handed him an envelope. Not just any envelope. An envelope containing samples. Hair, fibers, skin cells, a swab. Samples collected over months. He opened it carefully, slowly, like it contained something poisonous. Then he asked the question that would change the course of everything. What exactly do you want me to test? Diana shut her eyes. Her voice was barely audible when she spoke. I need to know the truth, the real truth. He nodded, but he needed specifics. What truth? She hesitated again, longer this time. Then she leaned forward, lowering her voice to a near whisper. It's about my sons. The doctor swallowed hard. Which son? Another pause. A moment of unbearable tension. Then Diana said a name. Not loudly, not confidently, but with a trembling, fearful tone that revealed everything she was holding inside. And whatever name she said. The doctor's face changed instantly. Shock, fear, realization. Like a man who suddenly understood the magnitude of what he'd been dragged into. He removed his glasses, rubbed his forehead, looked at her like she was handing him a grenade. Princess, this test could create a political crisis. Her answer was simple. That crisis already exists. She wasn't doing this on a whim. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't confused. She was calculated, focused, determined. The doctor prepared the equipment with shaking hands. He laid the samples on a tray. He labeled them using codes. No names, no royal connections, nothing traceable. Then he took a sample from Diana herself. Hair, blood, a cheek swab. She didn't flinch. Pain didn't matter. Fear didn't matter. Time didn't matter. Only the results. Only the truth. When he finished, he sealed everything into a specialized container and placed it inside a locked cabinet. Then he said, "This will take a few days." Diana's reaction? Her shoulders tightened. A few days is too long. He tried to reassure her. We have to run the tests accurately. They could change everything. She looked up. They will change everything. She stood to leave, but before she reached the door, the doctor called out, "Princess, be careful." She turned back. A sad smile. I'm already past that point. She stepped outside. Checked the street. Checked the cars. Checked for movement. The wind picked up. Leaves blew across the ground. A distant car horn echoed. But there was something else. A presence. A feeling. Like someone was watching her. Someone who shouldn't be there. She hurried to her car and drove off. She didn't know it. But she wasn't alone. Because across the street, hidden behind tinted windows, sat a dark vehicle with no license plate visible from the angle she approached. Inside that car, a figure with a phone pressed to their ear. And the words they spoke would become the first breadcrumb in the chain of events that followed. She came. She gave the samples. She left alone. Pause. Yes, I'm sure. Pause again. No, no security. She's acting alone. A final pause. And then the most chilling confirmation. We need to move fast. The moment Diana left the clinic, her life quietly entered countdown mode. Because someone knew. Someone reported it. Someone understood exactly what she was testing and why. And that meant someone had to intervene. But here's the part even Diana didn't expect. The doctor, the quiet, fearful man who took her samples, would vanish within days. Gone. Resigned. Fled the country. Left behind no forwarding address. No explanation. No trace. The samples? Unrecoverable. The clinic? Raided. The records? Erased. Everything Diana had done, everything she had risked, everything she had fought to prove, was gone, or so the palace believed. But Diana was smarter than they gave her credit for, because she didn't put all her evidence in one place. What the palace didn't know, what Charles didn't know, what the Watchers didn't know, was that Diana held back one extra sample, one they never found, one she hid in a place only someone who loved her deeply would ever discover. And that hidden sample, that single overlooked piece, is what ended up inside the envelope Prince William opened decades later. But before that sample would resurface, before the DNA truth could be revealed, Diana had one more person to warn, one more conversation to have, one more desperate attempt to protect her sons. And it happened the very night after the clinic visit, during a phone call Diana believed was private. She was wrong, because someone was listening, someone who wasn't supposed to hear what she said, someone who reported it immediately, someone whose involvement would push this story into its most dangerous chapter yet. But what did Diana say in that phone call? Who was she speaking to? And why did her words send shockwaves through the palace? The doctor wasn't supposed to leave. Not for months. Not without notifying the palace. Not without handing over all records. But within a week of Diana's secret clinic visit, the man vanished. No forwarding address, no phone number, no explanation, nothing. It was as if he had never existed. And that disappearance wasn't a coincidence. This was the man entrusted with the DNA samples, the man holding the key to Diana's final secret. And now he was gone. Think about that for a moment. A single individual, quietly removed from the scene, and suddenly the one piece of evidence that could confirm everything Diana had feared was left dangling, vulnerable, in the shadows. How does someone vanish in a world as monitored as London in the mid-1990s? Especially someone who had just handled the genetic materials of a Princess of Wales? The answer is chilling. Power, influence, fear. The palace, or someone inside it, knew exactly what was at stake. They couldn't risk the DNA findings being leaked, analyzed, or worse, publicized. And they acted fast. It's one thing to have a secret. It's another to have a secret with tangible proof. The kind of proof that could rewrite the monarchy's narrative, that could embarrass the crown, that could destroy reputations and careers. And that's exactly what Diana had in her hands. The doctor, though, was caught in a moral dilemma. He wasn't just a medical professional. He wasn't just someone doing his job. He was a human being. He understood the magnitude of what he had witnessed, the calculations, the hidden appointments, the meticulous care Diana had taken. He understood the danger she was in, and he feared for himself, because he had become, unintentionally, a witness to something explosive. He began receiving anonymous calls within days, threatening messages, warnings, hints that he should disappear. And he did. Within 72 hours, he handed in his resignation, sold his car, closed his office, shut down his private lab, and left the country, Ireland first, then Switzerland, then vanished completely from official records. Diana never learned where he went. No one asked. No one investigated. Not officially. But that wasn't the worst part. Because even though he fled, the samples he had taken, the very DNA that would one day expose the final secret, didn't disappear entirely. They were hidden, sequestered, protected by someone loyal to Diana, or at least someone she believed she could trust. The chain of custody is critical here. Every piece of this puzzle depends on timing. Because if the samples had been intercepted by the wrong person, if they had ended up in the hands of the palace or those loyal to Charles, the story you are hearing now would never exist. And Diana knew that. That's why she had not left all the evidence in one place. That's why she had prepared a contingency. Because she wasn't just thinking about herself. She was thinking about William and Harry. About the moment her sons would need to know the truth. But who would deliver it? That question haunted her in the weeks after the specialist disappeared. Meanwhile, the palace had noticed. The absence of the doctor was recorded. A note was filed in the internal logs. Security questioned staff. Nothing concrete was found. Diana, however, knew the system better than anyone. She understood the palace's tactics. She knew how rumors could be planted, evidence hidden, and narratives manipulated. And she knew that the DNA specialist's disappearance wasn't random. It was strategic, calculated, part of a larger plan she had only begun to understand. She began to act with even more caution. Every phone call was filtered. Every appointment was carefully scheduled. Every sample was meticulously labeled, tracked, and hidden. But even with all of that, she feared she was running out of time. Because the moment that doctor fled the country, Diana knew that someone inside the palace had recognized the gravity of what was happening. They understood that this wasn't just another routine test. It wasn't just another experiment. It was a truth bomb, a scientific confirmation of a secret that could destabilize the monarchy. And the more she thought about it, the more she realized something terrifying. The secret wasn't just dangerous to her. It was dangerous to the people who might one day wield it. People like her sons. People like William. And that realization drove her to make one final move. She began preparing for the eventuality that the DNA results would never be interpreted by the doctor who had fled. She began making notes, letters, and instructions. She ensured that the evidence would reach William one day. If not now, then later, when the timing was right. But timing was everything. And Diana couldn't control timing. She was living on borrowed time. And that's when the next complication arrived. Someone within the palace, or someone monitoring the situation, had realized that Diana's actions were deliberate. They understood she was collecting evidence. They understood she was planning to deliver it to her sons. They understood that she might have already reached a point of no return. And that realization sparked panic. Plans were discussed. Whispers were circulated. Actions were prepared. And the person most responsible for the response, the one with the authority to intervene, was none other than King Charles himself. The tension, already mounting, reached a peak. Because now, Diana's actions weren't just inconvenient. They weren't just embarrassing. They were dangerous to the very institution he was supposed to protect. And when someone in power feels threatened, desperation can follow quickly. And desperation, history has shown, leads to choices no one regrets until it's too late. But Diana didn't know all of that yet. She simply knew she had to survive. She had to protect her sons. She had to complete her mission, no matter the personal cost. And the disappearing doctor was both a warning and a confirmation. A warning that she was being watched. A confirmation that the people behind the monitoring were real and ruthless. She wasn't paranoid. She was strategic. And she had one advantage they didn't anticipate: her foresight. The missing doctor, the hidden samples, the carefully orchestrated plans. Every step she took was calculated to ensure the DNA evidence would survive. But there was still one unknown variable. The people who would intercept it in the future. The ones who might reveal it. The ones who might hide it forever. And the question that haunted her, relentlessly, was this: would William ever get the truth? Would he ever understand what she risked? Would he ever grasp why she took the measures she did? She didn't know, and she couldn't find out, because the palace was still closing in, and someone powerful had begun to move. It wasn't a letter. It wasn't a diary. It wasn't even a medical report in the usual sense. It was an envelope. A simple, ordinary envelope. Unassuming. Unmarked. The kind of envelope you would ignore if it appeared on a desk. Except this one carried the weight of decades. The weight of secrets. The weight of a mother's last fight to protect her child. It was meant for William. And when he finally held it, years after Diana's death, everything changed. But how did this envelope survive? How did it avoid the palace's scrutiny? How did it evade the people who monitored every letter, every message, every piece of paper that Diana touched in her final months? The answer lies in the timing, the secrecy, and the people she trusted, or thought she could trust. Diana had anticipated interference. She had anticipated surveillance. She had anticipated betrayal. So she built contingencies, backup copies, hidden locations, secret addresses, and instructions, meticulously detailed, encoded within notes only William could understand. This envelope was part of that plan. Inside it, DNA results, handwritten instructions, explanations of every step she took in her final months, names, dates, contacts, a map of the hidden truth she feared would die with her. But here's the thing. The envelope didn't reach William immediately. It didn't arrive in a sealed courier service or a secure post. It didn't come directly from the clinic. Somebody intercepted it. And the person who intercepted it was inside Buckingham Palace. Someone with access. Someone loyal to Charles. Someone who understood the potential devastation these materials carried. And for years, that person held on to it. Kept it safe. Kept it hidden. Kept it out of the wrong hands. The timing of its release was critical. Because Diana's legacy, and the revelation it contained, was explosive. The wrong moment could destroy the monarchy. The wrong hands could bury the truth forever. And the wrong person could destroy the life of the child who was meant to receive it. William didn't know any of this when the envelope arrived. He was at his private residence, quietly working through the evening, when a courier appeared. A simple package. No explanation. No note beyond his name. He opened it slowly. Inside was a document that would make him tremble. A DNA report. Detailed. Meticulous. The kind of scientific report that leaves no room for error or doubt. Alongside it, Diana had left handwritten instructions. Notes in her unmistakable script, some barely legible, some carefully composed, all written with urgency. William,